What's up, guys? Okay, Arena Docs are back for our continuation of the Crimson Vow limited set review. This time we're going to do our top 5 of blue, commons, and uncommons.
So coming in at number 5 is Cobbled Lancer. 1 mana 3/3 has an additional cost. You have to exile a creature card from your graveyard, and then it gives you card advantage in that once it's in your graveyard, you can pay 4 mana to exile it and draw a card. Obviously, 1 mana 3/3, great value, top tier always. It does require the extra cost, however, so you're not going to play this on turn 1 or turn 2, likely turn 3, turn 4. But even then, a 1-drop 3/3 on turn 3 or 4 is very reasonable, and that's going to get you the card advantage. This is probably going to trade with something or eat a removal spell. Obviously, weaker to bounce spells, because you may not have the gas in the graveyard to recast it. Gets worse in multiples, because you're just going to eat through your graveyard, and comes in at uncommon. So you're not going to reliably have this in your deck. But if you do grab it, I think it's good in a control shell. I think it's good in an aggro shell. I think overall it's a great card and deserves the number 5 spot.
For sure. Yeah, I think he's going to be a little better in the decks that want longer games, because if you really want to come out fast and hard, it's going to be a little bit on the slow side, but he's good. So value. I mean, the way I would describe this card is value. So you get value from a very cheap casting cost for 3/3 power. Then you get the card advantage later in the game. So I'm on board. I like him. Okay, next we've got the Dreadlight Monstrosity for 4 blue, 6 converted mana cost for a Crab Horror 5/5 creature. He has Ward 2, and then for 5 mana, you can activate his ability that he cannot be blocked this turn. And this can only be activated if you own a card in exile, and this is a direct synergy with the card we just reviewed, where it enables a card in exile. There's going to be tons of cards you get in exile through all of the disturb costs, because when those disturb enchantments leave the battlefield, they don't leave into the graveyard, they leave into exile. So this is actually quite, if you're in, for example, a blue-white shell, a more control shell, this is going to be premium card, because this is going to close out the game and quickly too. Even if you haven't touched them, they're on a 4-turn clock as soon as this hits the board. You can swing through for 5 damage. The Ward 2 is actually a nice benefit, because there's, you'll see you go through some of these removal spells and they're really expensive. There's a lot of removal in this set, but a lot of them are very expensive, 5-6 mana. So that Ward 2 is actually still relevant, because this is a big boy, and you're going to really want to focus on getting him off the board, because he'll kill you in short order.
Yeah, I think it's a great card. I mean, it's common, so you can reliably get it in your deck. 6 mana for a 5/5 Ward 2 is reasonable on its own. That's a reasonable top-end creature to do, especially if you don't get a bomb rare or bomb uncommon. So playing this at common slot is great. And then the fact that if you do have a card to exile, which you probably will by turn 6 or turn 7 when you're playing this, and he's just getting through every turn unblockable for 5 damage, excellent card, going to close out the game quick, and definitely deserves the number 4 spot.
For sure. Big fan.
Coming in at number 3, I love this card, Mischievous Catgeist. 2 mana, 1/1. And whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you're going to draw a card. So built-in card advantage, we've seen these before. Always great cards. The issue is that it becomes hard to actually get them through sometimes. But if you can get through once with the front side of the card and then pay its disturb cost to bring it back on the back side, which comes out as an enchantment, which will attach to any of your other creatures, and then still give that every time it deals combat damage to a player, you draw a card. If you get through 2 or 3 times with this, you're miles ahead in the game. It deserves to be uncommon as it is, because this could easily take over a game with card advantage. Love this card, big fan.
Yeah. So just a devil's advocate so it's going to be. I was just thinking through. It's a 1/1 without evasion that draws you a card if it gets through. So at face value, maybe that's not so hot, but I'm thinking the way that it would shine through is you go first. You play that on your second turn. They don't have a blocker available, or they have a 1 toughness blocker, and they are forced to block. Whether maybe it's a 3/1, something like that, they're forced to kind of trade down. Then you get your value out of this side. So this is the key, especially in a shell that runs a lot of evasion, which, for example, again, blue-white, it's going to run a lot. If you get that enchantment on one of your big flyers with 3/4 power, it's going to be, oh man, totally take over the game. No question about it. So.
Yeah, this is awesome. And as you'll see, there's some flyers in blue that you can put this on. Just combo off. Great card overall. Definitely deserves to be on the top 5 list.
Absolutely. Okay, Gutter Stalker. So this guy is a 4 mana 3/3, and he cannot be blocked if he attacks alone. And you can, let's just start with this face value here. So let's say he didn't have disturb, okay? So we've got a 3/3 for 4 that can't be blocked as long as he's attacking alone. That's playable. If you're in a control shell, that's playable. Pushing 3 damage a turn, that's a fast clock. I like that at face value. And this gets even better, which is why it's so high on our list, because of the backside. Now the backside gives this ability to any creature. And that's just totally insane. I mean, if you're this card, if you have a couple of these, it will really enable you to focus on being a control deck, because you're only going to need, you know, the one creature, because you're only you have to attack alone anyway. So you don't want a giant board of offensive creatures. You want more of a defensive shell, maybe some Syncopate, some counter spells, this sort of thing, and you can just chip away. You do 3 damage a turn. You get this on a 4 power creature, 5 power creature. It's going to be insane.
Right, and I agree. This is awesome. Usually you have to pay extra mana every turn to make your creature unblockable. Obviously the downside of attacking alone. I think it's worth it though. And then the jank side of me wants to put this on the cat and make the cat unblockable, attacking with the 1/1 that no one wants to use a removal spell on, but it's drawing you a card every turn. That does get through.
That's actually an amazing combo.
Obviously, 2 uncommons, not going to see often, but that's the jank side of me. I love this card. Definitely deserves to be on the list here.
I don't even think that's jank. That's a nice synergy. That's something to actually watch out for. Okay, so this time we have something special. We have an honorable mention. We talked about this a lot. We talked about what, you know, counter spells in general. How much should we value a counter spell in limited versus constructed? How much should they cost? And what are the different conditional? Is it, you know, a non-creature spell only? Is it going to be a hard removal? Do they have to pay 3 mana, you know, or else it gets countered? That sort of thing. Syncopate, I was actually really excited to see this be reprinted. I think it's going to be great. You know, on the low end, just for example, you only have to leave 2 mana open. If they tap out to cast something and you have 2 mana open, 1 blue and 1 colorless, then you can counter anything that they tap out on, and they're done. Now, I think the 3 benefits of this card, number 1 is it only has a single blue requirement, so you can play it more reliably in a 2-color deck, as opposed to some of the other decks where, you know, if you're green-blue, for example, having blue-blue casting cost is going to be a lot less efficient to hold up a counterspell. It's going to be telegraphed way more. But if you have only 2 mana open, they can't be as sure. You know, last set we had Flip the Switch, which was 3 mana, and you know if they have that 3 mana open, they're running blue-black, you're probably getting countered. So this is a little bit harder for them to anticipate having just 2 mana open. And then the other thing is, on the far end, where, you know, this is good in the early game because they're going to be wanting to tap all 4 of their mana to cast their 4-drop, of course. They don't want to wait till that 5th turn, leave a mana open so that, you know, to avoid that counter spell. So in the late game, when they, for example, like when they have 7 or 8 mana, and a lot of those counter spells that you could have had in your hand, where they say, oh, your opponent has to pay 3 mana or the spell gets countered, those are almost dead cards, because a lot of the time they're going to pay 4 for their spell, and then they just have that 3 open, so that card's useless. So Syncopate actually shines in the late game too, in that same way, where you can say, oh, you have to pay 6 mana to activate this spell, and they won't be able to do it. So I think it's good early and good late, and it's splashable. So I'm a huge fan of Syncopate myself.
Yeah, I'm not as big of a fan in draft. I think this card's going to be very good in standard. In draft, I like to be more proactive and not reactive. I hate holding a card with some mana up in the hopes that my opponent will tap out on something I actually want to counter. And in that case, I oftentimes I'd rather just have a different card that I could get on the board, put pressure, or draw more cards, actually impact the game state, rather than holding a card. If on turn 4 they play a 3 mana spell, even though they have 4 mana, you're not using this. So you've left 2 mana up, this card's a dead card in your hand, and you're going to play it at some point in the game, but it's just much more reactive, which I enjoy more in standard and non-limited.
Yeah. No, I'm with you on that. I think, but I guess maybe my assumption is that, so assuming that you're playing a deck that wants a counterspell, this is a really good one.
Sure.
That would be my overall point, I'd say.
And then coming in at number 1 is Storm Chaser Drake. 2 mana for a 2/1 flying, and anytime it becomes the target of a spell you control, draw a card. So any pump spells, anything you're throwing down on this creature, you're getting card advantage right there. I mean, a 2/1 flyer for 2, already good value, already playable. And then you start drawing cards off of this, it's going to take over the game. You're just going to get too much value, and you're going to win. Deserves to be number 1. Obviously deserves to be uncommon. If this was common, it would break the format. Great card. I'm a huge fan.
For sure, and this can be a build around, especially if you get a couple of these. You know, a 2/1, like, you know, there's the very old cards like Welkin Turn, 2/1 flying for 2, right? And that was a high playable, you know, when it was in the limited format. This is a 2/1 flying for 2, and then you have the possibility of multiple card advantage, right? So it all depends on what other spells you have in your deck to synergize with it. But I think just the fact that its baseline is so good, plus it has the ability for a lot of advantage depending on your other cards in your deck, I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, so that sums up our top 5 common and uncommons for blue Innistrad Crimson Vow. Stay tuned for further draft guides later this week, and we'll see you then.
You got it.